Hello, everyone, and welcome again. This is our first installment in the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion series. We're so excited that you're all here tonight to join us. Thank you again. My name is Mackenzie Wright, and I'm the Alumni and Development Coordinator for Excelsior University. Tonight, we are joined by Excelsior's founding director for the Center for Social Justice and our Chief Diversity Officer, Daniel Pascoe Aguilar, and our program director for the Center for Social Justice, Pamela Jimenez. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we begin, I just want to ask everyone to please hold any questions or comments for the end of the presentation. We will take 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A section at the end, so we just ask that you please use the Q&A function on Zoom to give us any questions or comments that you have at that designated time. Additionally, we're going to send out a survey at the end of the presentation via the chat that we hope you will all take a minute or so to fill out in your own time. We're going to leave it open for probably a week or two, so whenever you get a chance, but if you want to do it tonight, that would be great. We'd love to see your feedback. We thank you in advance for your participation in the survey. All of your feedback is so meaningful to us. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Daniel and Pamela. Thank you.
Mackenzie, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Excelsior University. I'm delighted to be here with Pam Jimenez, my wonderful partner in our Center for Social Justice endeavor. So Pam, would you like to introduce yourself before we get started?
Sure. So my name is Pam Jimenez, and I am the program director for the Center for Social Justice. And I've been at Excelsior now for a year and a half, and I'm happy to be here. I have a history of working with underrepresented populations, particularly Spanish-speaking populations. But I love the work that we do. I love the DEI space, the JEDI space, and I'm just happy to be here this evening. So thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Pam. My name is Daniel Pascoe Aguilar. I'm delighted to be at Excelsior. I have been at Excelsior now for a little over a year. It's gone really quickly. I have been in higher education now for 22 years. I cannot believe I'm saying that. It is my 5th career. So I'm telling you how old I am. And I am passionate about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, for which we use the acronym of JEDI, just for you to be aware. And we're delighted to be here with you. Thank you so much for spending your evening. I know that we have busy lives, so your presence is very meaningful, and we hope that we can today learn and grow together. So let's go ahead and get started. Mackenzie, if you could take us to the first slide. So in part, what we're going to do is share with you some of the work that we have done at Excelsior, but also begin to talk to you about how can you begin to envision this for your own environment, whether it is your personal development or for your organization, your team, your community, depending on what your experience is. So we're going to bounce and dance back and forth from this is what we're doing, and this is what we recommend that you could consider doing. So one of the most important takeaways, I think, of my journey in leadership has been the importance of eliciting the voices of community members, and not just to give them the space to share their voice, but to actually learn from those voices, right? To figure out how to best do our work based on the different perspectives that they bring. So we started our work as a Center for Social Justice by doing what we call the listening tour. And in that listening tour, we explored all the levels at which we wanted to do our work, because we wanted what we did to be as systemic as possible, as comprehensive, as holistic as possible. And we had over 40 focus groups. We met with every unit and a number of different groups at back then college, now university. And we identified together these 5 levels. These are the themes that we discussed. You can see them from building capacity, including infrastructure and staff faculty readiness, enhancing JEDI communication, information, and data, supporting underprivileged students and all students' intercultural development, reviewing and enhancing systems, including culture and community, and partnering for underprivileged student access and for thought leadership. Of course, these are specific to a higher education institution, but notice two very important things: the power of a listening tour. If you think of design thinking, this is the empathy and collective definition process. So that's one very important recommendation that we have. The other one is to try to look at all the levels at which you need to address opportunities and challenges of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, because many organizations do one or two things, right? But thinking of the whole system and how we can mobilize our work, I think, is very important. So we wanted to give you that background and also that recommendation. If we go to the next slide, based on that work, we decided to select a model that was systemic because we wanted to be as comprehensive as possible. And this is a model that we strongly recommend and that we're using at Excelsior by Jackson and Hardiman. Is called the Multicultural Organizational Development Model. And what it recommends, or the goal that it tries to help an organization achieve, is to become a multicultural organization. And notice that become is in the progressive form because it's a never-ending process. And that's a big takeaway that we hope you take with you today, that intercultural development, multicultural development, particularly multicultural organization development, is a pervasive, is a never-ending, is an aspirational process. We can never say, oh, we're done. We trained, we did exercises, we had conversations, so now we don't have to worry about that. That would be an antithesis of intercultural development. Now, becoming a Sorry, I got muted for some reason. Becoming a multicultural organization means three things. The first one is the most common one. If you go to the next bullet, Mackenzie, thank you, is an organization that focuses on inclusion, that all members are treated fairly, that everybody feels included, that there's equal access to opportunities, that everybody is represented. Unfortunately, many organizations that focus on justice or equity, diversity, and inclusion stay here. This model is comprehensive to the extent that it has additional levels. So the second level, if you go to the next bullet, is that the organization tries to figure out a way to leverage all the diversity of perspectives, experiences, ideas, skills to do better, to shape its strategy, work, management, operating systems, values, norms for success. That is very important. And it is, in my mind, one of the most critical emphases of our focus on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, because our ability to do better, to perform, to make decisions that are meaningful and make a difference are based on us harnessing our diversity and to put together all our intelligence in order to survive and to thrive, right? And not only as organizations, as a human race, we're dealing with a number of challenges that require us to value diversity and to leverage it to perform at the higher standard. And then the third level, which is the last bullet, is an organization that focuses on using the emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice to have not only an internal impact on itself, but to have an impact in the community around it. And I love that, right? Because it's very easy to be so involved in this work that we just focus on our opportunity to grow and to do better. Well, what about the community around us? We have a social responsibility to make a difference, particularly as a higher education institution. How important it is that we find ways of affecting our community. So Pam and I are right now in the process of developing an external persona of the Center for Social Justice that will be trying to influence and capacitate and have an impact in the community beyond the internal impact that we want to have. We go to the next slide. you'll see the model that I'm talking about. This is the model by Jackson and Hardiman called MCOT in short, but it's a multicultural team or organization development model. You can see the different stages through which an organization can go in order to strive to become or to work on becoming a multicultural organization at the very right of the chart. If we go to the next slide, you see here an example of the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion strategies that we're implementing at Excelsior that we recommend. So based on all the levels we talked about and this comprehensive or systemic model, the multicultural organization development model, we have identified 7 strategies on which we have been working for, what is it, Pam, a year? But we recommend that as you prepared to identify opportunities to help your organization grow, as you help your organization think systemically about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, that you identify strategies for each of the levels. So here, let me walk you through them very briefly. One is a framework we'll discuss today, but making sure that we have a way of sharing definitions, sharing models, sharing strategies, so that we are all maybe to some level customizing our development as teams, as individuals, but that we're doing it consistently across the institution in a way that is similar across every aspect of the organization. We'll talk to you at the very end about communities. We're developing identity allyship communities. If you go to communities.excelsior.edu, you see that we have 9 right now. Identity allyship communities. There are also 11 career communities that Tammy, who's with us, has been valiantly developing. But it's a fantastic opportunity for us to build a village around our students and around ourselves, right? And to connect based on what matters to us, whether industry-wise or how we identify or with whom or for whom do we want to be an ally. We're also working on integrating justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion across the curricula. We have a best practices summit coming up in June 13, and we're really excited about that. We have regular conversations. So we realized that the listening tour we did in the beginning was so powerful in that we could meet with so many people. We talked to over 400 people. When we do sessions and we invite people to join us, we have 20. That's a good day, right? Maybe 30. But these allowed us to go to every unit and then meet with hundreds. So we're doing that every quarter or at least every semester. And we're having regular JEDI conversations and tours with every area and every unit. And when, of course, we're translating that today with alums. We also did a video for students in the Cornerstone course, and we also have done sessions with faculty. The next one is establishing or developing pipelines for the access that underrepresented students have to our programs and working on different communities to make sure that we have as many opportunities for students who otherwise would not have access to higher education through Excelsior programs. And part of that is also us developing thought leadership. We're about to begin to offer very affordable consulting support to organizations with whom we partner and in the community to help them grow in their JEDI efforts. You'll hear soon that we are hopefully going to be relaunching some opportunity for us to do education for students who have Spanish as their first language in a way that allows them to learn English and also begin their programs in Spanish. A very exciting program called Adelante. We're still in the planning stages, but that's a very exciting part of or an example of 5.5, right? How we're trying to establish opportunities for underrepresented students. And of course, in 5.7, we are working on enhancing the recruitment and retention of our diverse workforce, both faculty and staff, to make sure that we are as represented as possible for the students we serve. So just to give you a sense of not only what we're working on, but to give you a sense of how, if you're thinking of your organization, how can you begin to think of distributing strategies across the different levels and systemic emphasis of your work in order to have a robust agenda on how to become a multicultural organization. We go to the next slide. One exciting part of our work is that we're trying to measure the outcomes of our strategies, and the way in which we're doing that is through a maturity model. So we're mapping the maturity of each of the strategies through these levels, whether they are in a compliance level, intentionality level, engagement level, culture level, or impact level. And in that way, we can see when we move from one to another level, celebrate small successes, make sure that we are transparent and communicating progress so that we all know where we are and where we're going. If we go to the next slide, you'll see how that looks like. So this is a maturity mapping of Excelsior University strategies. You can see the strategies in the black font on the left, 5.1 through 5.7 that I just described for you. And then you can see the descriptions for each of the levels for each of the strategies. You can also see in the yellow where we have assessed we are, and in the green where we're trying to head. These already moved from a year ago, so we're beginning to make some progress, and this is something we're about to put in our website to be as transparent as possible about the work and the progress that we are working on. Let's go to the next slide, and if I am right, Pam, do you want to talk a little bit about the tours?
Sure, but I do want to highlight two things. I want to highlight that these strategies and the tours and everything we're doing, as Daniel has said, didn't happen overnight. It was a matter of gaining the trust of the university constituents and fixing. So we have all these things that we're doing that for externally, because we know that we've been working so hard internally in our own house, getting in order, fixing our home, right? So that then we can turn around and as a community, a university community, we can then extend this work to the external community. So it's about embracing the uncomfortable. We had a wonderful speaker the other day for MLK, and it's a YouTube video on our YouTube channel, and it's worth watching. And he gave us some great nuggets. And one of the things he started with telling us was that, and we already know, right? JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion work is about embracing the uncomfortable oftentimes. And as Daniel said, any progress, as small as it is making progress. And so we go to our folks. We know everybody's busy. We know units are busy. We know that sometimes everybody gets hyper focused on what they're doing. And every unit in our university is important for the student success. So we want to make sure that we don't infringe on their time. They're working. We don't want to overburden them with additional work or additional things that they have to attend, especially being an online university. Sometimes that gets a little bit frustrating for our folks. So what we do is we design these tours. Daniel designed these tours so that we go to the units. We take an hour out of their day, right? Almost a reprieve from their regular day. And we go to them and we embrace the uncomfortable conversations. Oftentimes we have these JEDI conversations on a quarterly basis where we go, and like I said, we have dialogues with our units. We have dialogues with our diverse Excelsior stakeholders, and of course periodic cabinet meetings with Excelsior areas. Our cabinet's very important. Leadership is very important. Leadership has embraced JEDI from the very beginning. That's where it came from. It didn't happen overnight, but it does. And having the support of leadership at the cabinet level is so instrumental to the work that we're doing. So, Daniel?
Thank you, Pam. Next slide, please. So we had mentioned that one of the strategies was the tours and the dialogue. So Pam just talked about those. Another one of the strategies that we're also trying to facilitate today is the framework. So we developed this framework based on models that we have come to really appreciate and we thought were really applicable to our work. We call it the JEDI map. JEDI, of course, stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. MAP stands for the three elements that you see there: mindset, approach, and policies and procedures. There are two very important things about this map. The first one is that it is focused on two different aspects of the work that we need to do at an organizational level. We cannot help an organization grow interculturally if we only focus on training people individually, or if we only focus on the individual push for this work. I have had the opportunity to work with a consultant that has done these for like literally hundreds of organizations. It's amazing to see his experience. And he said, every single organization I know, they have only succeeded if they don't only do ground up work, that there's top down work that needs to be done in combination to ground up. So individual push for intercultural development is necessary, but it cannot be enough if the leadership of the organization is not leading, is not pushing, is not promoting this work. So this model tries to merge both the individual intercultural development with the organizational and team intercultural development. So that's a very important element of this. Another thing to notice about this framework is that this series is designed to talk about each of these bubbles one at a time. So today we're going to talk about mindset and how should we challenge our mindsets and our assumptions in order to do better at an individual, team, and an organizational level. So we go to the next slide. Let's talk about how we can challenge our mindsets. And then we'll get into some reflections and hopefully conversation. So we decided to include in the framework a model that, in my perspective, has been really powerful to organizations and to my own personal experience and leadership. It is called the Developmental Model of Intercultural Sensitivity. It was developed by Dr. Milton Bennett, who is the founder and president of the Intercultural Development Research Institute. Now, let me do three things with this model that I think are quite important. The first one is to walk you through what this model is and what do these stages mean. It focuses on how we experience difference. I mean, it's very simple. How do we perceive and interact with difference? And it's important to focus on that because it's any difference. We're not only talking about race and ethnicity or gender and sexuality or different abilities, or we're talking about any difference. It could be personality, it could be different values, it could be different perspectives, different experiences. And then what it does is it helps one try to identify where one is through stages that move one from what they call ethnocentric to ethno-relative stages of our intercultural sensitivity. So let me talk to you briefly about these levels. The first one is denial. Denial is this concept that my experience is the only one. No other experience exists. So my role, my focus is denying everything else that I see, which is actually quite difficult to do, particularly now that we have access to so much information, right? So still happens. It usually doesn't last very long because it's very evident that there are other experiences out there. So denial often quickly moves into defense, which is the understanding or the assumption that, yes, there are other experiences out there, but guess what? They're all wrong. Mine is the only right one. So then my role is one of defense. I need to defend my experience. Can be exhausting, right? Because you have to defend who you are and what you do and what you believe. And now this defense stage is not only exhausting, it's also difficult to maintain because it's clear that there are many other experiences out there and there's value to them. And the more exposed you are to them, the more you might actually begin to move into the next stage, which is minimization. Minimization is the understanding that differences don't really matter, perhaps don't even exist. I've heard often people saying, well, the problem is that we're talking about our differences. right? Why are we focusing on differences? That's why we don't collaborate. That's why we don't understand each other. That's why we don't see each other. Well, there's a problem with the minimization. Let's say that I am working with Pam and I am in the minimization stage. Then I will assume that Pam is like me because I haven't taken the time to learn from Pam and realize, oh, I cannot minimize our differences because we come from different experiences, different journeys, different perspectives, right? And there's a lot that I am learning every single day from Pam that allows me to realize there's a lot of value there. And listening to Pam makes me better and makes our work better, right? So there's a challenge with the minimization, as novel as it sounds. Let's focus on our similarities. I might miss important differences that can illuminate our work, our collaboration, our relationship. Then we move into ethno-relative stages. The first one is acceptance. I see other experiences, other journeys. They're not better or worse. I just see them. I don't do much with them, but I accept them. Then there is adaptation, which is the stage of I begin to interact with other experiences and with other journeys, right? And I begin to adapt and to change and perhaps to grow. It's a challenging but very exciting process of growing and understanding and learning, and I begin to adapt. And we could even go into the stage of integration, where I can go in and out of realities, right? I can step out of my reality, potentially even risking me going back to that experience in the same way that I left it, because I change, right? That's the beauty of intercultural growth and intercultural sensitivity, that I change through the process. I can even step into another experience or journey to stand up for it, right? At the very least, to learn and to grow and to change through it. So that's one very powerful value of this model, that it helps us see where we are, where might I be stuck, and how can I perhaps progress to the next stage. I don't need to go from denial to integration, right? I can go from denial to defense, and that's growth. And that's exactly what I should be doing. Also, when I'm stuck with someone else, I might think, well, in what stage might we be stuck, and how can we strategize? How can I strategize to help us move to the next stage? So it's a very powerful model that I found very helpful for individuals, teams, and organizations. We just had every person, every community member at Excelsior explore this with us in our last tour. If we go to the next slide, one very powerful aspect of this model is that it helps us define intercultural sensitivity in a very simple way. Now, keep in mind, how we perceive and interact with difference is one of the most challenging parts of human reality, to the point that in many instances, including today, so unfortunately, we have gotten to moments of genocide because we struggle to understand difference. We struggle to see our humanity. We struggle to value diversity. So this is a very serious and challenging aspect of human existence. But this makes it really simple to understand, as challenging as it is, that is just how we perceive and interact with difference, and how we need to work to try to move away from assumptions and instead focus on learning, on observing, on inquiring, and making sure that we are, rather than making assumptions, gathering information to be better able to be inclusive, equitable, and just. So we go to the next slide. Probably the most important aspect of this model is its assumption. I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Bennett when I was at the University of Oregon a few years ago. And I asked him, I find this model fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with it? What led you to envision it? And he said, well, it's a very simple observation. That observation is that we as human beings have the tendency to think of ourselves, of our journeys, of our experiences as highly complex. If you ask me who I am, where I've been, I'm going to draw this whole board with charts and graphs and numbers and equations that very quickly become a ball of complexity, right? I'm going to tell you about my family and our health and our finances and our education and careers and hobbies and everything that makes me happy and wakes me up at night worried. And then he said, unfortunately, the observation continues by noticing that as human beings, if we go to the next slide, we also have the tendency to see others' experiences as less complex than ours. That we tend to see less complexity in others' journeys, potentially even simplifying them. I tried this, right? I have an 8-year-old. I learned about this when she was approximately, I think, 3 or 4. And I said, let me try this. And I realized, oh my goodness, this is the person I probably have ever loved the most. This is a person I know from 50 hours of her birth, because we adopted her at that point. And still, I mean, of course, she struggles to convey certain things. She's still learning to talk and emotions and, you know, whatever it is. But I've interacted with her differently ever since. Right, because I focus on the complexity of what she's feeling, of what she's trying to communicate, what she's understanding. But it is very clearly a challenge that we have to assume the same level of complexity in others' experiences than the one that I assume in me. And here's where the rubber meets the road. If you remember something, I want you to remember this. And that is that we are actually quite unlikely to be able to understand someone else's experience because we haven't walked those shoes. Regardless of that, we should assume the same level of complexity, which requires me to be curious and to ask and to want to learn and listen and observe rather than make those assumptions. Examples that I give often is I'm Mexican. I grew up in Mexico, then I transitioned to the United States. I am more selective now of when I tell my story as an immigrant, because I've noticed that when people don't have a similar experience, they struggle to understand what that means, and then they are frustrated and I'm frustrated, because it's difficult to understand, right? Now, some people are really open to learning, which is wonderful. And on the other end, I need to understand that I will probably never have the capacity to understand the reality of a professional, a working woman who has earned 87, 78, 64, all the way down to 54 cents, the dollar that I made, if they're a Latina woman, simply because of their gender. I cannot understand that because I haven't walked those shoes. That does not mean that I don't have the responsibility to learn about it, to grow from it, and to do everything in my power to try to change that pattern, right? So our inability to understand someone else's reality should never preclude us from taking this challenge of assuming the same level of complexity in others than the one that we assume in us. We go to the next slide, Mackenzie. So Pam will walk us through reflection questions, and then we will do some polls and comments and take it from there.
Yes, so if you could just hit the button. So as we reflect on what Daniel has just said about assuming the single story or the single narrative about other people, let's take time to reflect on the following questions. So Mackenzie, if you could just, can we interact with others and do our work and assume that their experiences others than ours out there? Next button. The different experiences are not wrong. They're just that different. Next. That others' experiences are as complex as ours. So not just a single story, not what we hear. That's how stereotypes are developed. Thank you. That we might never be able to fully understand and experience different than ours, and that is okay. Next, that we must respect others' experiences, regardless of our ability to understand them. And that we must seek our growth as individuals, teams, and organizations based on different experiences of others with whom we interact. And so with that, what we'd like to do is we'd like to ask you some questions. So Mackenzie has kindly put up it's a Mentimeter platform, and what we'd like you to do is give us some answers to some questions. So if you go onto from your phone, you could just go onto www.mnt.com, use that code, and then you'll answer some of our questions. And I will put up the Mentimeter on the screen so we can watch and interact, and you can give us your responses to the question. So I'll know once everybody or the majority of you are on. Yes, when you start answering the questions. Thank you so much. So have you ever witnessed someone being perceived as less complex than others or being defined by a single story? So I'll give this a couple of seconds because I know everybody's just getting on right from your phone. Just put in that code in the chat and you'll be able to answer. And there's a few other questions. So in about 5 seconds, for the purpose of time, I will move on to the next question, and please feel free to answer the next question. Okay, so I'm moving on to the next question, and please feel free to engage as well. I should be moving on to the next question. My Mentimeter is really stuck right now. There's 13 people on. Okay, perfect. Okay, the next question is, have you ever felt that you have been perceived as less complex than others, or that you have been defined by a single story? And the next question is, have you realized that you inadvertently perceived someone as less complex than others or define them by a single story?
Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Yes, I'll just go back.
So, just something quickly to notice here is this was the pattern across every unit we visited, the sessions we did with faculty. And evidently here, there's quite a bit of pervasiveness, right, about us either experiencing it, us witnessing it, or us noticing that we did it. So it's a challenge for us, right, to assume the same level of complexity in others. And so to me, I think the takeaway of this is to think of these questions as questions that we need to be asking ourselves every single day, every single interaction. Start with the people you love at home. Approach them differently, right? Either ask them or be careful about it, or if you notice you did it, right, apologize. I mean, just it's this consciousness that can allow us to challenge our assumptions and to make sure that we are not simplifying others' realities. I mean, how often are we thinking of an answer when someone is asking us a question, right? Or arguing something with us? Can we just listen? and then I mean, there's these patterns that I have noticed that I get into, and how important it is for us to approach things differently. Thank you, Pam. So if you can go to the next questions.
So we'd also like you to answer this one while your Mentimeter's up. How could you say, or what could you do to challenge or change instances when you feel that you are being perceived as less complex than others. This is open text, so you can write as much or as little.
It's anonymous.
And it's anonymous, right? So when you feel that you are being perceived as less complex.
So let me give you an example, right?
Right.
Something that I recommend doing when you realize this person doesn't think as much of me as they think of themselves. And they're assuming less complexity in me is, hey, let's go for a cup of coffee, right? Let me tell you about me and can I learn about you? I mean, that's as simple as it starts, but it breaks a pattern of I'm assuming that you are X. And it could also help you break that pattern of I'm assuming that this person can care less about me, right? It might not be the case. They might just be too busy or distracted or stressed or anxious or whatever it is. So think of what can you say or do to challenge or change instances when you feel that you're being perceived as less complex than others.
These are wonderful answers. I'm going to move on for the sake of time to the next question. And it is very similar, but this one is, what could you do or say to challenge or change instances when you notice someone is being perceived as less complex than others? So it's being done to someone else.
One example that I like to share here as you think of responses and input them. I once at another institution was approached by someone I supervised who was having a hard time working with someone else whom I also supervised. And she said, I just cannot work with her. Every time I'm around her, I feel that I need to walk on eggshells. And my answer was, well, how do you think the eggshells feel about that? The eggshells are fragile for a reason, right? You're about to step on them and break them for whatever reason. Can you connect, right, at a level that allows you to see what the challenges are and then address those more directly?
Wonderful. Show support for the person, give them the floor. That's right.
Challenging, yeah, absolutely.
And as Daniel loves to say, don't assume that because a voice isn't being heard, it doesn't exist. It is out there, and there are different ways of eliciting everyone's voice, and it's important that everybody is heard. So this is a great way, right? In a platform like this where there's anonymity, some people don't feel comfortable, but the voices are out there and they should be heard, and sometimes are quieted by the louder voices. And so we don't leverage everyone's perspective when we don't allow everyone to be included. So I'll move on to the final question. Again, for time, we know we have a few questions. What could you do or say to prevent or avoid others perceiving others as less complex than you? So you are responsible for your own behavior. And what could you do to prevent that when you catch yourself doing it? Because again, as Daniel said, it's all about having that frame of mind, being cognizant of what we're doing. We're not perfect, and that is fine. But, you know, check your ego at the door. Stay humble and kind.
In the second session, we're going to talk about the importance of spending time, investing time in learning about what matters to the other. Mm-hmm. Right. And to me, that's a wonderful way of engaging in this process of always saying, well, before we get started with our collaboration, our conversation, tell me a little bit about what's important to you. Why are you doing this? How can we do this in the best way that allows for your voice to flow and to be on the table, right? And for us to be inclusive and equitable. It's very seldom that we have that conversation. And there's vast research that argues the value of doing that for our performance and decision making, not just because it's a good thing or an inclusive thing, but because we're going to perform better if we invest in that way. So thank you, Pam, and thank you, Mackenzie, for passing the slides. And I think we have a little time for questions and comments.
We do, yes. So if folks want to start putting their questions in the Q&A, we've got about 10 or so minutes to go through them. Really great responses to our previous section for our polls.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. You were really
Yeah,
out there. That was awesome.
So we have our first question. How do you help others value JEDI when they feel they are being slighted or challenged?
But what was the first word, when they feel like they are being what?
Slighted. When they feel like they're being slighted.
Or challenged?
Challenged.
Well, here's one piece that Pam and I talk about all the time. I think it's very important, right? There are two ways of either starting or facilitating JEDI conversations. One of them, which is actually unfortunately quite common, is the approach that focuses on closing the conversation, right? So I noticed that you said something you shouldn't have, and I'm going to tell you that you're wrong and how terrible that is, right? Like, that's not going to open anyone for dialogue, right? It's like, that's just like, I don't want to talk to you again, or I don't care about this subject, or whatever it is. There's the approach of always approaching a JEDI conversation to open it. That means meeting everyone where they are. That means growing to the extent that is sustainable to grow. And that happens, I mean, this is a lot easier said than done, because if you think of an organization, you have people who are at very different levels, and you need to meet everyone where they are. You want to help someone to go from defense all the way to adaptation in one step, right? There's a process. And people going at their own pace and at their own rhythm, in their own way, is critical. So at least what comes to mind, and Pam add to this, but I think that focusing on approaching justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion conversations specifically to open the dialogue, however little you moving forward, that's the game, rather than to close it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's a process in and of itself. I think oftentimes, along with the question in the chat, what have you seen as challenges to JEDI? I think probably, and I'll take the question, and I'll also piggyback off what Daniel said in the last question. It's the expectation that we have oftentimes of what we want to see in others, right? In this space. Sometimes we want others to progress to the level that we think they should be at. And it's really about where they are at and meeting them, as Daniel said, where they're at. So the challenges that we face are really the expectations that we put on people to be where we think they should be. Any progress is good progress in this space. You know, you think about how polarized some people are with conversations that are uncomfortable, and any measure of progress is better than nothing, right? Moving the conversation along, and definitely just allowing for space to listen, for people to get, you know, a little bit uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. So I often find that that's the biggest challenge, is our own expectations, and kind of having to check, as somebody said so rightly, right? Stay humble. Check your ego at the door. As people doing this work, you also have to do that. You have to check yourself, because it's not where you want them to be, it's where they're at and where they want to be.
Yeah, we could easily fall into thinking that facilitating JEDI conversations and growth requires me to be in the defense stage, right? Where I'm the only one right, everybody else is wrong. and now I'm thinking that I'm doing the right thing, but I'm actually going backwards in the process.
Thank you both. Our next question is also in the chat from Chris. Are there programs that you recommend, such as LinkedIn Learning on JEDI, eCornell certificates on JEDI, anything else?
One that I have really liked is Harvard has an implicit bias process. It's free. You can go in and complete a survey, and then you get your results, and there are resources for you to grow. One exciting thing is that Pam and I have become certified to administer and interpret the intercultural development inventory. So soon we're going to make that available to every stakeholder of Excelsior University. It's a fantastic way of knowing where you are in that model and what intercultural development plan you can follow to grow at an individual level. And then we can also do it in teams and organizations. So look for that. But there are a few things out there that are really powerful. It's a matter of engaging.
Great. Gonna move back into the Q&A from Jane. How is Excelsior University working with teaching faculty to infuse JEDI concepts into the curriculum?
I love that question.
Great question.
If you notice, there was one of the 7 strategies is integrating JEDI across the curricula. So we worked with academic affairs to figure out how to get started, and we're putting together an JEDI integration in the curriculum, instruction, and assessment best practices summit in June. And it's going to be a feast of sharing best practices and having conversations about challenges and opportunities that will help us then begin to identify how to better prepare faculty for this work, how to better develop curriculum and instruction that integrates JEDI into them, and also how to assess the development of our students in this area. So we're really excited about that, and looking forward to. There are a lot of faculty at Excelsior that are fantastic work, and I can't wait for that summit to learn more about their work.
Absolutely. We're also putting together, I'm part of a committee in which we're putting together a tool so that we measure every class based on this tool that is in essence, a JEDI tool. And it's beginning, like I said, but hopefully in the next year, every class will be assessed through the lens of JEDI. And so that's so important. Faculty and making sure that the content is also inclusive content, so that the students feel comfortable and included and see themselves reflected in the work that they do.
That's awesome. Thank you both.
Sure.
So our next question in the Q&A, how do you determine what experiences have value and do not have value to aid in the common goal of inclusivity? From Sam.
That's in the, let me just read it. What experiences have value and do not have value? Well, and Pam, jump in as you see fit. But I honestly believe that it's very important. This is where it really counts to never assume that because a voice is not on the table, it doesn't exist, or because a voice is not brought up, it doesn't need to be elicited. You have to ask, right? JEDI work is like medical work, right? A doctor cannot do anything with me if I don't tell them what's wrong, if I don't tell them what hurts or how I'm not feeling well, right? It's based on inquiry. Our work requires us to ask, how is this experience working for you? Because it can work great for 99%, but what about for you, right? And how can we change that to make it work for you? And that Excel analogy that I used can be very real, right? It's not, oh, but you're different. Why are you making such a big deal? Well, there's a reason for that. Let's actually learn about it. Let's not make assumptions. So to me, it's about this listening tour idea. To me, is kind of the rule under which we need to operate to learn about how experiences can actually be inclusive and equitable for someone else. Because if we might not have a capacity to understand their experience, how can we have a capacity to understand how they're reacting to an experience, right? We need to ask.
Absolutely.
So our next question in the Q&A from Christopher, will the nursing program include JEDI at Excelsior in the near future?
Well, actually at Excelsior, the School of Nursing, that is now part of the College of Nursing and Health Sciences. We were so excited about that. is one of the most impressively focused and with quite a bit of expertise on JEDI. But part of the idea of the summit, which involves them, is to bring that forward and then to work with them to figure out how to enhance that as we continue the progression into our exciting becoming of not only a multicultural organization, but a university.
And I also think that, yes, the nursing program is absolutely the leader in that at Excelsior. But I also think that these conversations and this work, which is why this is a series, right? Because it's just more than just opening the door. It's how do you get people to walk through the door, right? Sometimes just opening the door is enough, but really the goal, right, is to get them through that door. And so just like this is a series of webinars that we've put together to actually show how this work progresses. It is the same when you do it in your organization. Sometimes it's just about laying down the foundation, having people sit with it for a while, and then, you know, proceeding when they're comfortable. And so with every aspect of the university, that's the approach that we've taken, and it's an approach so that people don't shut down, and so that's important. Daniel has been here for a year and some change, and it's been a progressive. It's been listening. It's been, you know, and making sure that we are where the university needs to be to make sure that change happens, that we walk everyone through that door, so it doesn't happen overnight.
Great. I know that we're on time, but I think we'll go just a couple of minutes over to kind of do a recap, and then we'll do one last question from Tracy. How do you engage an institution that is unwilling to recognize diversity and where you are the only diverse individual present? And that's in our chat.
Mm-hmm.
I think, because this happens often, right? I think that it is about using these models to identify where the organization is and move into the next level. Here's a very important assumption that we need to make. We're all growing. We will ever be growing. All of us, right? Like, we need to stop this potential assumption that I have arrived and someone else hasn't arrived. We're all growing. So identifying where we are and how we can move forward is the game. It doesn't matter if what we identify as the organization is in denial. How can we strategize to help the organization move into defense, and then into minimization, and then into acceptance, right? To me, that is not how fast we move the needle, is the opportunity to move the needle forward. So it takes a lot of work, and it's not, none of this is easy, right? It's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, but it's meeting people where they are and help them move forward. And of course, one opportunity for us that we're trying to do this work is to engage in dialogue about how do we do this, and how do we address challenges and opportunities. So let us know we can help in more detail.
That's a great question, and I'll add this to that, to the response. I asked the same question as well, similar question to our keynote speaker for MLK. How do you kind of take care of yourself and protect yourself? Sometimes, you know, in situations where you are the only voice, right, that is maybe representative of whatever, of a different, you know, community out there. And he said something so great is, how do you fill your cup, right? What do you do to self-care? And what do you do to fill your cup so that you can come back stronger and make sure that the work is being done? Because the work is important, and any progress, right, is important. And so if you continue to want to do the work, and you continue to want to be present and fill your cup, these, you know, listening to folks that are in the same, they may not have to be part of your organization, so they can re-energize you so that you could go back and you could do the work that's important to you. So surround yourself with folks that will always help you grow, and then go back and try again, right? And I know that sounds so easy to say, but it really is about filling your cup and what makes you happy. And if this work makes you happy, it's not about being, happy every day, all day, and not, listening to everything, right? God knows we haven't always gotten a reception or the right answers or what we think we need to hear. But it's definitely about filling your cup so then the next day you can wake up and do the work, because it is such important work in any organization. In any organization.
That's really wonderful advice.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
Yeah, no
It wasn't
problem.
mine. I was told.
It was great to
So I
share.
filled my cup.
You summarized it beautifully.
Mackenzie, can I do a little plug before we leave?
Go for it.
So just to let you know that we have developed identity allyship communities. We are hoping that you engage in them. We have 9 of them. If you go to communities.excelsior.edu, you can browse through them yourself and learn more about them. But we're looking for engagement, for opportunities to interact with you through them. So check them out and let us know if you want to get further engaged. Communities.excelsior.edu.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I put 3 links in our chat. The first link is our survey. We would love to hear your feedback on the session tonight. You've all been so wonderful and so engaged in our chat and our Q&A. So we've gotten a really great amount of feedback there, but we would love it formally as well. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple of minutes to fill that out, that would help all 3 of us out as we plan the next few installments in this series and in all of the important work that Daniel and Pam do for JEDI at Excelsior. The second link is the communities that Daniel just shared about. So please check that out and engage with that site. It is wonderful. If you're interested in this work and you're interested in these topics, that's the place to be. You got to check it out. It's great. And then the third is Excelsior Connects. I would be remiss if I did not talk about Excelsior Connects. That is our alumni networking platform, but current students are absolutely encouraged to join. So please, please, please join Excelsior Connects. I'm on there. Daniel's on there, Pam is on there. We're all there. So if you want to connect with us there, that would be great. We share a lot about events there. We have resources. It's a great place. And then the recording for tonight's session will be there. We're going to try to get it on the communities as well. And it's going to be sent to all of you via email from Zoom as soon as we get everything set. So you'll have the full webinar presentation if you want to check it out at a later date, right in your email. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to throw it in the chat right now. You can reach out to the alumni email. It's alumni@excelsior.edu. I will get back to you if you have questions for Daniel and Pam. Send them that way and I'll forward them over. Thank you so much for attending tonight. We hope to see you in future sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.